Maranatha, and welcome to Septuagint versus Masoretic, the channel where we look at the truth about Scripture, the Holy Bible. We look at the Septuagint, the version of Scriptures that the Messiah and his disciples used, versus the Masoretic text, which came centuries after Messiah had already been crucified and resurrected. So we're looking today at Deuteronomy chapter 10. There are 22 verses in this chapter, beginning in verse 3. We have an omission of boards. So let's just wait for that to load. Okay, here it is. So we see boards, an ark of boards. So those were, here it's just of, it doesn't say they were made of boards, but they were in fact boards. Incorruptible wood versus shittim wood. Perhaps that is simply a translation of the word shittim. Verse 4, in addition, in the day of assembly. That's verse 4, okay. Where is it? In the assembly, yeah. The day of the assembly was added. Verse 5, another addition, myself. I turned myself, okay. Verse 6 now, we have an addition of ministered and the office. So ministered in the priest's office, so office was added as well. In verse 7, we see the word torrents used versus rivers in the Masoretic. I usually call them Septuagint sept and Masoretic mas. So you're going to hear me say that from time to time. That's what it means. Verse 9, an omission of himself. So that is not there in the mas. Verse 9, continuing on, as he said to them, versus according as Yah, your Elohim, promised him. Verse 10, in addition, according to the first time. Verse 11, go, versus arise. It's one thing to stand up, it's another thing to actually go, take your journey. Verse 13, an omission of your Elohim, that it may be well with you, versus for your good. So similar sentiments there. Verse 14, an omission of belong to. So it does say is here, but that's in brackets, meaning it was inserted. And they wouldn't know to put that unless the Septuagint existed or predates the Masoretic, which it does by centuries, possibly even 1,000 years. Verse 15, chose. He chose out versus had a delight in your fathers. So we can see there's a bias here saying that he delighted in them, to love them, and he chose their seed. Here it says, only Yah chose your fathers to love them. So he does love them, but it's not saying that he has a delight. That's not what it says. Okay, verse 15, significant difference beyond all nations. He chose out their seed after them, even you, beyond all nations, as at this day, versus above all people. What does that mean? If you choose a particular group of people beyond all nations, so you're choosing them above and beyond, perhaps, is how you can say it. And above all people, you know what, it's not wildly different, but it's just expressed differently. So terminology-wise, it is different. Verse 16, we have our first big difference of this chapter. It says, circumcise the hardness of your heart. That's a different expression than we're used to. It says in the Masoretic, circumcise the foreskin of your heart. No, we know what a heart looks like. There's no foreskin on a heart. It makes a lot more sense that someone has hardness in their heart, whether it's plaque or what have you. But we know hardness. When someone hardens their heart, that means that they've hardened their resolve. They're going to stay set in their ways. Another big difference: you shall not harden your neck. So you can harden your heart. You can also harden your neck. Interesting expression. And it says here, be no more stiff-necked. I think they're rather similar. I think harden your neck alludes to being stiff-necked. So what it's expressing here is don't do it. You shall not harden your neck. So don't do this. So he's commanding them, please don't, actually not even please, just don't do it. Don't do it. Versus you already did it. Be no more stiff-necked. So there is a big difference here. They weren't stiff-necked. According to the Sept, they had hardness of heart, and you shall not harden your neck. Okay. Maybe hardening your heart is a precursor to hardening your neck. Verse 17, accept versus regard. So I think that's the title of the video, is circumcise the hardness of your heart, or maybe the foreskin of your heart. Do hearts have foreskin? I hope I don't get banned from YouTube for saying that word, foreskin. Verse 17, accept. Who does not accept persons versus regards not. So it's not that he doesn't look at people, but he's not accepting people in terms of showing partiality, showing favor to one group over another. And he will not accept the bribe, nor take reward. So I think those are, taking reward means taking a bribe. It's just worded differently. Verse 18, significant difference here in the omission. It says here, judgment, executing judgment for the stranger. So in the Maz, he's executing judgment of the fatherless, the widow, but not for the stranger. He just loves them, but he's not executing judgment for the stranger. Here in the Septuagint, Yah is exercising judgment, executing judgment for the stranger, the orphan, and the widow, all three groups. None of them are given preferential treatment. And that's important. Verse 21, boast, he is your boast versus he is your praise. And it says here, wrought in the midst of you these great and glorious things versus has done for you. Terrible, which means amazing things. So it's rather close. And I think that's it. Yeah, that's all for this video, for this chapter. So thank you very much for your time. May God bless you and make your way prosperous. Tune in next time. We'll look at Deuteronomy chapter 11. Maranatha.